Hey everyone, Miss Portelli here. So today's set of notes is going to be focusing on the idea of chromosomes with specific focus on the distinction or the understanding of a pair of homologous chromosomes, which we've touched on briefly in some of our previous notes, and specifically the difference between an autosome and a sex chromosome. So let's take a look at that in a little bit more detail. So let's quickly recap what we already know. We already know that DNA is coiled around proteins such as histones, and that's what helps form a chromosome that we then see when the cell is undergoing mitosis. So that image at the bottom there is just to remind you of that. We also know that in humans, we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. We get one of those in each pair from mum and the other one from dad. So in total, we end up with 46 chromosomes in a human. A reminder from our previous notes that when we are looking at a pair of chromosomes that contain the same genes, we're referring to them as a homologous pair of chromosomes. So that second diagram on the screen here, this one here, is to remind you of what a homologous pair of chromosomes might look like. So we might look at this set of chromosomes here. The blue one might be from dad, the red one might be from mum, obviously containing the same genes as indicated in the diagram, and we're looking at DNA before it has been replicated, or these chromosomes before it has been replicated in the S phase of interphase. Because they contain the same genes, they are referred to as a homologous pair of chromosomes. We can also use the same term to refer to that second part of the diagram over here with the X structures. Let me just rub some of this scribble out so we can see it a little bit better. So with those X structures, obviously the DNA or those individual chromosomes have now been replicated, and we're seeing sister chromatids make up each individual X. We've got the blue one from dad, the red one from mum, and because each of those chromosomes in this pair contain the same genes, noted by the bands on the chromosomes, we can now say that they are a homologous pair as well. A reminder about the difference between a gene and an allele. A gene is obviously a section of DNA that codes for a specific trait or protein, for example, hair color, but we can have different alleles or different versions of those genes. So if we're looking at hair color, there's obviously going to be alleles for things like brown hair and blonde hair and black hair and red hair, that sort of thing. So lots of variation or lots of different versions of the same gene. So remember those terms, allele and gene, please. The two types of categories of chromosomes that you need to be able to distinguish between are autosomes and sex chromosomes. So some of you might already be able to do this, but in case you can't, an autosome is referring to any chromosome within an organism's genome that does not code for their sex. So in humans, we have 44 of our 46 chromosomes are known as autosomes because these chromosomes contain genes that influence our other physical features, but they have absolutely nothing to do with what sex we will be. In humans, our sex chromosomes are the chromosomes that are involved or help determine what sex we are. So we can have the combination of XY, which will determine the sex of an individual to be male, or we can have the combination of XX, which will determine the sex of an individual to be female. Just so we're clear, we're talking about biological sex here. We're not talking about gender of an individual. Another interesting point that you guys do need to be aware of is for the biological sex of an individual in humans to be determined is actually only determined by the presence of the Y chromosome. So in an individual, if there is no presence of a Y chromosome, they default to the biological sex of a female. If a Y chromosome is detected in their cells, it'll obviously express different traits that will then result in them being biologically male.